Well, good evening and welcome to the Oak Point Nature Preserve in Plano, Texas. Tonight's exercise is a field test of the Cyansky H5GT hunting flashlight. Now you may be thinking, wait a minute, didn't we just see this or something exactly like it? You have the ring, you rotate it, and it rotates colored filters in front of a white emitter. And yes, you're exactly right. Been there, reviewed that. This model is different. First of all, you can see it's really large, and trust me, it has the heft and the weight to match the visual appearance. It does have the ring or the dial right here, much larger, much thicker. But instead of rotating filters, this light actually rotates emitters. So you have two emitters, one white and an optional colored emitter. So you can purchase the light in either white red, white green, or white blue. Now, I have the white blue model. The advantage of this setup, of course, is that you get higher output, especially from the colored emitter. The downside, as it may be, is that you only have those limited options. But you're probably asking, why did I select blue? After all, red and green are the most popular colors for hunting. And the answer is, I like to test and evaluate lights that I might also use in a search and rescue context. And blue lights do have a number of advantages. At a low output level, they can be useful for blood tracking if you do not already have a UV light. When searching bodies of water that are sufficiently clear, blue can allow you to make identifications at greater depth than white. Like light yellow, it also has advantages when there are a large number of particulates in the air because you don't get the bright reflections coming back at you. And by extension, it is reputed to be good for light rain and fog. Well, rain and fog, that's just going to have to wait for another time. I can, however, offer you lots of water. But before we get to those tests, I want to point out one more thing, and that is for the white mode in all models of this light, there are 4 output levels: low, medium, high, turbo. However, without regard to what color you choose, red, green, or blue, there are only 3 output levels: low, medium, and high. And this is probably the point that you're yelling at the screen, yeah, I already read about that, shut up, I want to see the light in action. All right then, you want it, you got it. All right, let's get started in white mode, low output level. The environment tonight is going to be very bright, not a cloud in the sky. So we have light pollution from the surrounding city and about a half moon out tonight. But I think that makes for very challenging circumstances, and I like to test in challenging conditions. So as I move up here, going not quite 50 yards to the restroom area, bump up one into medium. Right over here is the picnic area where I filmed the introduction. We're moving out to a good 75. And then over 100 as we get past this tree line. And what I want to do is move a little bit more to my left and swing out over the lake. There is high. And right there is a gap between the trees that I can just barely see. There is a wooden post that has a reflective sign on it. That is a good 600 yards from my current position. And then let me one up into turbo, and I can actually see well behind that gap between the trees. Again, about 600 yards line of sight. Here we are in low blue. Let's run through approximately the same circuit. Okay, there is medium. Remember, that's over 100 right in that area. Then I'll swing out over the lake. And there is high. I really can't see that gap between the trees, but this is still a very impressive output, certainly relative to what is listed on the spec sheet. I'm at the opposite end of the lake, looking down into the water in medium white. As you can see, incredibly murky. Blue is not going to give you any advantage in this type of environment, but let's look out to the opposite edge. Just go along the opposite shoreline a bit. I'm having to guesstimate, but this is kind of in the 100-yard range, right around here. Now let's look at the same sequence in blue. All right, here we are in medium blue. At best, visibility down a couple more inches, not all that valuable from a practical search perspective. Then let's move up to the opposite edge of the lake. Then we'll go around to approximately the same distance that we did in medium white. All right, let's go look at a creek test. This is medium white looking over a creek. That's something very reflective right there. Then out in the distance, medium is just perfect for that distance, roughly 50 yards. And then let's look near perpendicular here so we can compare the reflections. So fun. I'll switch up into high. All right, let's look at blue. One up into high. I think high is a better search mode here. Then let's get perpendicular. That hot spot is probably showing up a little too hot on the phone, but I'm getting superb detail from the blue output. And then let's run it kind of along the edge here. So this is a distance test in a wide open, very bright environment. There's the moon I was talking about. I got a couple trees out here, roughly 375 yards if I average all the distances together. I'm getting okay visibility. I mean, I can tell that there's a tree out there, but I can't get much detail around it. But this is in a very light polluted environment. Now let's look at the same thing in blue. High output in blue. We're getting a blue reflection off of a sign way out there. Again, I can tell that there are trees out there just from the ambient light. The blue it's getting out there. It's casting a slight blue hue on the trees, but it's not really giving me any additional detail. Well, speaking of bright lights, let's go look at some photonic barrier tests. I have parking lot lights to the right with a bit of a green cast, and street lights to my left. There's a structure in front of me about 125, maybe 130 yards to the back. Let's look at that in high blue. And then pan a bit to the right. Can't really see much in that tree line back there. Gets a little bit better at this distance. I'm standing right underneath a parking lot light with street lights to my left, additional lights ahead of me and to the right, over 160 yards into that far tree line, and in turbo white, I have excellent visibility inside that tree line. So from the standpoint of a long throw light, it's doing a very credible job. So I have my headlamp on, taking a quick break. I just wanted to point something out because it may be relevant to some people. You see these marks right here? This is the direction that you rotate to go white to color mode and back. Now, if you just pick the light up and you start using it, this is pretty tough. For a lot of people, this is going to be a two-handed operation, and it does take some practice to develop the muscle memory to go the correct way. If you hold it too far down to this end and too tight while you're twisting up here and go the wrong way, you might twist the end cap off. And yes, I did it once. That's why I'm trying to point this out. That will turn the light off. That is, in fact, your lockout if you are interested in transporting the light and avoiding an accidental activation. If you have this mounted on, say, a long gun, that won't be an issue. But if you're using it maybe for the first time as a completely handheld asset and you're switching back and forth, just beware of that because it may catch you by surprise the first time it happened. Well, that's about it. Let's go wrap it up for tonight. This is the opposite side of the creek than I normally do wrap-ups. We're looking at my search and rescue headlamp in 2000 lumen spot. Now let's light this up with the H5GT in high blue. All right, there we are, high blue. I think the colored outputs are probably the star of the show with this light. I would expect even more impressive output with red and green based on these specs. What I took away from tonight's exercise, in addition to the preliminary eval, is this may replace the need for me to take a dedicated blue light when I go out on searches that I think I will need a blue. It's an interesting calculation in the sense that the light's a bit heavier than what I would normally carry for a long throw left shoulder light, but it's certainly much lighter than a long throw light plus a dedicated blue. So the utility, remember, I'm a ground-based asset. Ounces are pounds, pounds are pain. So that utility is going to be based on how often I use the blue. If you're hunting, it may be the opposite. You're used to using a dedicated red or green. Maybe you get a lot longer throw with this model, but it's a bit heavier, so the utility is going to be based on how often you use the white. Well, I can't really make that decision. The best I can do is frame it, get out here, run the test. I'm probably going to do at least 2 more tests for my own purposes. Don't know if I will film those. We'll just have to see. And I'm going to go ahead and shut it down tonight. And always, until the next review, thank you very much for your time, and thank you for watching the video.